Hello and welcome to the Hope Relentless Marriage Podcast. My name is Sarah-Gayle and I have my incredibly good-looking, brilliant husband, Chad David, joining us. And we are so thankful that you are here tuning in as always. And our hope is that you would learn something that can really impact your family. And it's a ripple effect because as you impact your family impacts the community, and the community can change the world. So this is amazing work that you are doing as you resource your marriage.
And so today's topic is not the sexiest topic, but at the end of the day is such a common trait of healthy marriages. And so the topic today is intentionality. So when we work with couples, regardless of the season that they are in, intentionality plays a key solution for growth, for understanding, for connection. And so we wouldn't be serving the couples to the best of our abilities if we didn't talk about intentionality. And so we're going to explore this topic today and how it plays a part in different areas of our marriage and why it is so crucial in terms of maximizing healthy communication and healthy connection in our day-to-day marriages.
Yeah, Chad, you said it's not the sexiest of topics, and this is true, but we already had 3 podcasts. The preceding 3 podcasts were about sex. So go ahead
Fair.
and go
That's
listen
fair.
to that if you want a sexy topic. But intentionality is something, like Chad was saying, that is huge. It's very significant. And it was interesting because we were on a walk actually this morning and we were excited about the boys getting to experience our church's summer camp this summer. And
Yep.
I kind of went a bit negative in my mind a little bit because I was excited. I'm like, oh my gosh, they could be totally transformed. They could experience this amazing time that changes their life. And then I quickly brought that back in and I was like, well, then they're going to come back and they're going to be in the same environment. They're going to go to the same schools that they were at before. So over time, they probably will just end up being similar or the same to how they were before that experience. And so, Chad, do you want to tell them
Yeah.
what?
And so I jumped in and tried to validate and acknowledge your concern, which I think is reasonable. And I think it's a thought that many of us have in a lot of areas of our life. And at the same time, the other side of that is, yeah, we need events. We need moments in our life that are inspiration, that allow us to connect, in this capacity, going to a youth summer camp and, having a more focused time with their peers in an attitude and atmosphere of faith and worship and fun. And they're going to come back and yeah, they're going to need to continue to be intentional to grow in their faith. But the reality is, this is true of every key area of our life.
Yeah.
I ate a meal yesterday. It doesn't matter how good the meal was. It could be the greatest meal I ever ate in my life. I need to eat again today. My workouts last week, it doesn't matter how disciplined I was last week. This week calls for a new level of focus and intentionality. And this is a question I get from couples consistently. We can fall into the trap of looking for one-off events to quote unquote fix things. I want to go to this marriage conference. I want to attend marriage counseling. I want to go to this marriage retreat. And all of these things are so powerful. But when we get back, we need to apply what we learn day in and day out. There's a level of intentionality that is crucial to having long-term growth and health in any area of our life, including our marriages.
Yeah. And I think my heart posture when it came to even that thought process that I was having is just the reality that, like you said, marriage counseling, a marriage conference, whatever it may be, people working on your marriage, going to church, hearing a message that is transformative, that is like, wow, like I'm ready to go. I'm sure that's happened if you attend church or even a motivational seminar, something that inspires you and you're like, I will never be the same. And then
Yeah.
sure enough, over time, we kind of go back to how we were. And that can be so discouraging. But the hope is that it doesn't have to be that way if we are intentional to continue to do the things that we learned and that really stood out to us. And I think the more we kind of step into the reality of the fact that, yeah, that's what happens. We stop working out, we lose muscle, right? We
Yeah.
stop applying the things we learned in marriage counseling, we'll have more arguments. Kind of go back to how we started. And I think the more we realize and recognize, yep, that's the truth of the matter, then the more we can be diligent to do what we need to do to make it to make that a different truth and to live out the life that we want to live. And so we want to talk about a couple of areas of intentionality when it comes to marriage. There are many, but we want to highlight just a few here. And those areas are time, being intentional with our time when it comes to our marriage, being intentional with our money when it comes to our
Yeah.
marriage, and also our marriage growth. And then lastly, filling each other's cups, which we'll talk about what that means if you don't know. I know that we've talked about it in some podcasts before, but we'll clarify that. So to start, time together. When it comes to our marriage, we need to be intentional about time together. It doesn't just happen. Our lives are busy. And even in the midst of our lives, as we're trying to be intentional about time, the consistency of that time and the quality of that time is everything. Because
Yeah.
it's just, if we can do things consistent and it's just a little bit, over time, that creates a life. Whereas what Chad was saying, we have these events maybe once a year, quarterly, but then we don't do anything else in between, we're still going to feel disconnected and we're not going to experience God's best for relationships. So that consistency of focusing in on that time together consistently is huge. And then also in the midst of that consistent time, what is the quality of that time? Right? If Chad and I are just hanging out and we're like, oh, well, we consistently are hanging out, having conversation, but we're fighting during during every conversation we have
Yeah.
consistently, that's not going to be the time that we need to build our marriage. That's not the way. And so there's so many examples of how we spend time together that doesn't actually speak to the intimacy of a marriage or actually build the marriage. So the type of time you're spending needs to be intentional. The type of questions, the connection that you're having, it's helpful if it's more focused and intentional.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that we hear a lot of couples share within their day or week is that they watch shows together.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think there's anything wrong with watching shows together, but I think the value of the deposit is pretty limited,
Yeah.
especially in today's culture. The reality is we could be watching a show on the TV and one or both of us has a computer or a phone in addition.
Yep.
And so
Yep.
we're not even fully engaged in the phone or in the show, let alone with our spouse. And so
Mm-hmm.
that could be something like you and I have at different times shows that we like, although most of the shows that you like, I think are terrible. And most of the shows I like, you think are too violent. So,
Yes.
um, but it's finding that quality time. And I think real quickly, something that when we implement, and we've been much more consistent over the last couple of years on this, is we take turns planning dates. And so there's something powerful that happens when I plan a date or when you plan a date. When somebody takes ownership, the intentionality around that time is just better than when we both just kind of casually show up and go, so what are we doing? I don't know. What do you want to do? Well, I don't know. What do you want to do? Inevitably, those are the times that we often just end up watching a show because it's easy.
Yeah.
But when one of us plans out, we're more likely to be intentional with a new experience or a new restaurant or even conversational starters. We're on our phones all the time. Let's take a moment to type into Google conversation starters or great questions to talk about with your spouse. Or
Yep.
it really is pretty low level to find an abundance of questions. And some of the questions are stupid, but
Yeah.
some of them are great. And so just that simple element can help kind of with time and the quality of that time that we can spend with our spouse. But once again, it takes intentionality. One of us
Right.
or both of us needs to take a level of ownership of having quality time with your spouse because it matters. And oftentimes when working with couples in counseling, like they have no time together, right? It's
None.
work, it's kids, it's extended family, it's entertainment, and then they're wondering why the relationship is struggling. It's like, well, if the relationship, like it's not getting the foundational things that it needs to thrive. And that does require a level of intentionality to have a great marriage.
Chad, I was reminded of a date you recently planned for us, and we went to the putting range. And it was amazing.
Driving range.
Oh,
Driving range.
that's how much I know about golf. And it was amazing. I loved it. It was very simple, but one of the things I know you had to do was you had to actually think about it. You had to, it had to be somewhere in your mind where you had to plan it, because
Yeah.
that's what the intentionality is. It's planning, it's thinking about it. It doesn't always have to be so elaborate. Like, that was a very simple date, but I loved it because I knew you planned it. You knew what was going to be there for us, and you knew what it was, what I needed to bring and all. So I knew that you kind of went ahead and did that. And I think that adds to that intimacy of the time you spend together, that quality of that time. And then there's something else. Oh, I think I lost it. Um, I was going to say I lost it. So just moving on, I guess. Anything else you want to say about the type of time, the consistency in the time before I move on to the next one, Chad? Okay. So money. Money is another area, and this might be a little different, but I really think that when it comes to our money, our finances, we need to be intentional about that when it comes to a marriage that is connected, because money is a big deal in our life.
Yeah.
We don't have to serve money or be obsessed about money, but we definitely need money to
Yeah.
live and to enjoy certain things, and to invest in different things. And so I think it's important to be connected and on the same page with your spending and what you're spending money on. And this kind of goes into dreams and the future together, because what do you get excited about? What are you hoping to do together in the near future and in the far distant future? Because it most likely will involve finances. And so I know for us, we spent a big season of our life, and somewhat we're in this season still, with competitive youth sports. I know
Yeah.
many parents that are listening, you understand where we're coming from, or maybe you're just entering that stage of sports. Your little ones are starting to want to really get into more competitive types of sports. So hopefully we can shed some light and some wisdom on that. But it's important to really step back and look at, okay, where is the money going? And is this where you want it to go? Do you feel like you're stewarding the money well as you look at the quantity that's going to sports, for example, and the quantity that's going to other areas of life, making sure that you guys have a plan as a couple and you feel good about that plan? Because if there is anything off as to the amount of money that you're spending, especially if it's in an area where it requires a lot of funds, a lot of finances, then that is a conversation that really needs to be had, because that can help you guys get on the same page and be excited about where your finances are going, rather than in the future regretful.
Yeah. And I think, I was thinking of this in a little bit different, but I see it's one of our next talking points, and that's marriage growth. And
Mm-hmm.
so I was thinking of money as it relates to marriage growth.
Mm-hmm.
And oftentimes when couples work with marriage counseling, so many of the couples that we work with experience incredible transformation and growth. And I think the reason is they take two of their most valuable resources and they invest them into their marriage. So their time,
That's
they
good. Yeah.
set aside time for their marriage on their calendar weekly. For some of the couples that we work with, they haven't been on a date in months. And now all of a sudden they're setting time aside every week to invest and grow in their marriage. And the other thing is, marriage counseling costs money. And
Mm-hmm.
so it's this time and this money invested into their marriage because their marriage matters. And we love working with couples, and oftentimes the couples are in difficult spots. Some of the couples that we work with are coming out of an emotional or a physical affair, or realistically are on the brink of divorce. And it's like a
Mm-hmm.
last ditch effort. And even in that context, we see couples completely transform their marriage. And our heart and our passion is that, people would invest in their marriage. Marriage counseling isn't the only way to do that. There's so many other ways, but invest in your marriage with time and money proactively, right? On
Yeah.
the front end, to enjoy and really experience that marriage growth. And I think that's something, at times we look at as, man, we're putting X amount towards youth sports, which is great. And the kids have fun, but, realistically, the odds of little Johnny being the next Michael Jordan, or Steph Curry or Patrick Mahomes, or whatever your sport is, are pretty limited. But the odds of investing in your marriage, the return of that is significant. And so I
Yeah,
think
so
that's
good.
an important part as couples for us to consider. If we're looking at our calendar and we're looking at our budget, and there's nothing in there that says our marriage is a priority, then I
Wow.
don't know that we should be surprised that our marriage is struggling. Like, there
Mm.
should be date nights, there should be weekend getaways, there could be marriage counseling, there could be little, like I said earlier, go on to Google, go on to Amazon, buy a pack of 20 conversation starters for spouses. Like, it's not, these are just little things, little opportunities that are there, kind of low hanging fruit that if we just prioritize and are intentional, can be a game changer.
Yeah. And it brings the joy into marriage. When we're intentional and we're planning dates and we're buying different date books. I remember, Chad, you bought us that adventure challenge date book
Yeah,
where it's like a scratch off thing. It just spices it up. It does something different, and it makes
yeah,
it so it's not this monotonous thing of let's just check it off a box. What movie are we watching today? Do you have the popcorn? Like, sometimes that's fun, but what I'm saying is let's do things that are different, that are exciting, because I think sometimes we forget when we become adults and married that, hey, we like to have fun.
I don't
And
forget.
I guess maybe it's just me. Yeah, maybe it's just me. But it's like, I like to have fun. I like to laugh. I like to have adventures. And we see in marriage research that that is crucial in couples that are happy, that are enjoying their marriage. They have more positive interactions together than they do negative. They are filling the days with positive touch points as far as appreciation goes, but then also fun things that are planned. They're dreaming together. And so if you're in a marriage right now and you feel like it's all about task and business, like maybe it could be seasonal in the sense if you have really young kids, we understand and you have to be
Yeah,
creative. But still, we still want to spend the time together. It just is going to look different. You just have to get
yeah,
creative with that. But if you're in a marriage now and it's like you're not doing anything fun, you're not looking forward to anything, then I would encourage you, take some time, get together and put something on the calendar. Sometimes we have counseling sessions, and I remember one couple specifically. I'm like, "Hey, what would be fun?" And they said, "Oh, it'd be fun if we got to go to a beach in California." And I was like, "We're in Arizona. That's very doable." And they're like, "Yeah, it is doable." And so then we
yeah,
just walked through, okay, what needs to happen? And then they were at the beach in the matter of a month or two, whereas they had been wanting to do that for years. So
yeah,
sometimes it's just let's hold on, let's sit back, let's figure out, okay, what do we want to do together that's fun, and let's put it on the calendar so we're starting to look forward to some things.
yeah. That intentionality, right? They knew what
Yep.
they wanted, but they were
Yep.
never intentional enough to put it on the calendar and make it
Exactly.
happen. And so
Exactly.
sometimes dates and adventures and experiences, but there's another part of our marriage that requires intentionality, and that's serving. That is
Mm.
serving one another. And, we use this term sometimes, like filling one another's cups, right? Like
Hmm.
making an intentional deposit or contribution in a positive way to your spouse. And this is another area that takes intentionality, right? Like, the odds of ever feeling like rubbing your spouse's hands or feet or giving them a back rub, like, might be low,
And you
right?
might have morning hands also.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Inside joke, not expanding on that. But um, the reality is there's certain elements of things that our spouse appreciates and enjoy that just require a servant's heart. If we're waiting until we quote unquote feel like doing it, then everybody's just waiting. But I know at different times, different concept, but one of my love languages is physical touch. And
Hmm.
so if you rub my neck or give me a hug or some of these things, I really appreciate those. But it requires a level of intentionality to do those things. It's not just natural.
Yeah.
Sometimes even when we think about just intimacy, right? There's times where sexual intimacy requires a level of intentionality.
Hmm.
Depending on the busyness of life, the chaos or age of the kids, and some of those dynamics. If we just wait until both people feel like it, that's a different dynamic. It's these key areas of our life require discipline, intentionality, and consistency.
Yeah.
But the reward on the other side is so
Yeah.
significant.
Yeah.
It's so worth it to make that investment into your marriage.
Yeah, that's so good. And I just want to kind of piggyback on that, Chad, when you were saying the rubbing the feet, the hands, we're not always going to feel like doing that. And that's something to really recognize that we're not going to feel like doing that. And that's okay that we don't feel like doing it. The more
Yeah.
we can be honest with ourselves and recognize that, then the more we can get ourselves out of the way and focus on, okay, in the midst of me not feeling like doing that, what do I need to do it? Because
Yeah.
it's meaningful for my spouse. Just like I would want them to do things that are meaningful for me. They don't have to feel like it because that's not their thing. So I understand that they don't feel like it, but it's amazing when we have two people who are just looking to serve their spouse, not based on if they think it feels good. It's not about it's not about us in that moment, and that's
Yeah.
okay. Right? So it's kind of like reframing how we think about what it looks like to fill our spouse's cup and to serve them. It's not a natural thing. And so sometimes because it's not a natural thing, we're not always thinking about it. Like Chad loves his feet to be rubbed. I never think about rubbing Chad's feet. I mean, maybe on birthday or Christmas because I can like pawn it off as a gift. Oh, and I got you a certificate for rubbing your feet. So maybe on those occasions, but
I have a lot of
out-
unredeemed certificates.
what? No, no, you do not. We won't go into the unredeemed certificates and the expiration dates supposedly that are on certificates.
We need a
Well,
session with our own marriage mentors to work through this.
I know, gosh, airing our dirty laundry right here. We're trying to encourage you guys. So, so, anyways, yeah, the point is, I don't ever think about rubbing Chad's feet naturally. So,
Yeah.
this is when we have to figure out, okay, well, what do I need to do to think about these things more? And sometimes, again, it is putting it on your calendar because a lot of us live by our calendar. It could be putting it on the calendar. I had one couple who had words that were important to their spouse, like, uh, or actions that were important to their spouse, like rubbing feet or rubbing hands or whatever. And they put it on their mouse pad because they work all the time and they
Yeah.
use their mouse pad. And so they're
Yeah.
able to see and remember, okay, so these are some things I want to keep top of mind because this is helpful for filling my spouse's cup. So things like that, where there's a
Yeah.
will, there's a way.
Well, and I think that kind of goes kind of counter to not what everybody, but what some couples think. And that's
Mm,
that it should be easy and natural.
mm, mm,
You know, sometimes people come and they're like, man, a relationship shouldn't be this hard.
mhm.
Now, let's be honest, there are some situations where they're right. Like
Yeah.
there's this relationship, especially if they're like dating or engaged, it's kind
Yeah.
of like, I think we should just go our separate ways and regroup from here.
Mhm.
But in the context of marriage, when we've already made that covenant and that commitment to one another, like a healthy relationship isn't just by accident, right? And so some of these things we have to apply in our marriage, and we're different people, and
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
sometimes that just takes being assertive, right? Sharing what is important to us. So if I'm over here frustrated that you don't ever rub my feet, but I've never mentioned how much I appreciate it, and then I'm frustrated, it's like that's not fair, right?
Yeah.
Like that's unrealistic. And so there
Yeah.
is an element of assertive and healthy communication in the I statements, and we talk about that a lot.
Mhm.
But it's this recognition it takes work because we're different. We have different interests, we have different likes, we have different tastes, we have different desires, and those things are all okay. And they just require intentionality to help us close the gap as a couple.
Yep. I had a couple, and the man was a bit of a romantic, and I'm kind of a reformed romantic. There's nothing wrong with being a romantic, but I'm just saying for me, it was a bit unhealthy extreme because I grew up on the Disney generation to the point where my amazing husband proposed to me in New York City on a horse and carriage ride. I was actually just thinking about that, Chad, and that is a whole nother level.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like I just say it, but then I was actually thinking about it the other day and I'm like, "Oh my goodness, that's incredible." And you are so young, didn't know nothing, and you wow, you made it happen. So,
Well, And we
But
didn't
we're
live in New York. We lived in LA. It wasn't like we walked down the street to Grand Central Park. So it was, there was some commitment. But I also planned on getting engaged only once in my life. So I could kind of pull out
oh,
all the stops. You know what I mean?
touche. Okay. Yeah, so it was incredible. And I was talking to this couple and the husband was a romantic and I felt him. And he's like, she should just do it. Like she should just know what I like and when I walk into a room, just come up and be excited and like give me a kiss. And he was outlining what in his mind would have been a loving wife. And when it didn't happen that way, he was very disappointed and hurt because what he had in his mind was not coming to fruition. And so this is what Chad's talking about here, where we have these expectations and these thoughts of like, oh, they should just know it shouldn't be this hard. It should just click. But the reality is the relationship becomes dissatisfying when we come into the relationship thinking, oh, they should know, but then they're not doing the things that we haven't quite communicated to them because then we think it doesn't count if we tell
Yeah.
them what we're wanting. And so then we never get that sense of what we're wanting because they don't know and they're a different person. They literally, I think the more we can understand, your spouse is a different person. They literally do not see the same thing that you see when you look at anything because they're coming in with their own schema. They're coming in with what happened at work in that day, what they're
Yeah.
focusing on in the moment. And so if we can understand that, then I think we can have a bit more grace for each other and recognize that us telling our spouse how we like to be loved, how we like to be respected doesn't make it not count when they actually do what we're saying. It makes it so we're setting ourselves up to experience a win, to experience something that we both feel good about.
Yeah. Yeah. That's so good. And so one of the last things that we want to talk about that can support an increase in intentionality is accountability. And I'm going to spin this maybe a little bit differently than you intended, but as parents now of teenagers, you and I talk about and pray about and think about who are our boys hanging out with,
Mm-hmm.
right? What are their
Mm-hmm.
group of friends at school, in the neighborhood, on their soccer teams, whatever it is? Who are they hanging out with? Why? Because the peer pressure, right? And realistically, we want them to have positive peer pressure. We started out talking about the summer camp that's coming up and
Mm-hmm.
just believing and hoping that that's a great opportunity and environment where they get to see people their age worshiping and praying and learning and growing in their faith.
Mm-hmm.
Well, in our marriages, let's apply the same thing that if we're parents, we want for our kids. And it's all about the environment and the community that we put ourselves in. And so if we're surrounding ourselves with other people that want to grow in their marriage, then naturally we're going to grow in our marriage.
That's
But if
good.
we surround ourselves with people that are dissatisfied or complaining about their spouse or divorced or don't like our spouse, right? Like imagine if you have a best friend that hates your spouse or a family member that you let speak negatively and disrespectfully about your spouse. And so
Mm-hmm.
let's be intentional about the people that are around us. There's this quote that says, in 5 years, we're going to be the same people based on, or we're going to be an average of the books that we read and the 5 people we spend the most time with. Well,
Mm.
when it comes to marriage, like we can change the trajectory of our marriage because we can change what we're listening to and how it impacts our marriage. So podcasts, books, different teachings, community, there's so many resources that are available to us. But once again, it takes intentionality.
That's
But
right.
once again, our marriage is worth it. Our marriage is absolutely worth this level of intentionality. And so that is kind of my final closing thoughts. What about for you, babe?
Yeah, I love what you said. And kind of a statement I would make is accountability is what moves intentionality from kind of just a thought or potential to an action where you're
Yeah.
actually living out the life that you want to have because you have accountability. Because we see it time and time again in sessions where the couples are thriving because we're holding them accountable every single week. We meet with them weekly and we're holding them accountable and you see the growth with that accountability. I have some couples that I hold accountable to go to doctor's appointments. That doesn't necessarily have anything to do with the marriage. I mean, it does as far as the health that pours into the marriage, right? But just in general, it's not exactly related, but the fact that I can see them every week and then ask them, oh, did you schedule that appointment? It
Yeah.
gets them to do it. And
Yeah.
so that's
Even
something
your
we just,
beach couple.
the what?
Your beach couple was an
Yeah.
example that because of accountability, they did something that they had been wanting to do.
Exactly, exactly. And so accountability is what moves us. And it's, I have a lot of compassion on couples who kind of went through a period of growth and then went back, because I understand how frustrating that is. But at the same time, I'm like, hey, we just need to get some accountability in place and we get you right back on track. So some action steps would be to think about, what will accountability look like for you? What does it look like when it comes to all the things we're talking about when it comes to your marriage, like the time you're spending together? Do you guys even sometimes a checkpoint, a meeting that you guys might have monthly where you have these items that you've already talked about that are important, like time together, like date nights, and then you have that monthly meeting where you're like, hey, how are we doing? You kind of grade yourself. That could be a measure of accountability. But also, we could talk about the Who, which is in a different podcast where we have different people of the same sex that we go to and that can ask us questions that we're accountable to, and we have to answer according to, yeah,
Yeah.
did we appreciate our spouse, daily? And then we go to our accountability partner, no, I didn't, this is why, or whatever it may be. So ask yourself, what does it look like to be accountable in these measures regarding your marriage? And then also, what areas can you grow in regarding these things that we talked about? What are some areas that you want to grab hold of and really focus in on? That's it.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, you got to do your little jingle, your little appreciation
What?
time
I
jingle.
want to hear you do the jingle. You know the jingle.
I'm not in the shower, so I'm not singing.
Okay. By the way, someone commented to me on this jingle and they said they love it. And they do this jingle also. So I think it's catching on worldwide, actually. So I'll go ahead
I'm
and
not
teach it to those.
I'm not 100% sure how I feel about that, but it's good.
Appreciation time. Appreciation time. All right. So this is a time we appreciate one another and encourage you to make that an active part of your relationship as well. So, Chad David, one thing that I appreciate about you is your positivity. In general, you are a positive person, and I can be more prone sometimes, like given the walk that we went on this morning, to be like, oh my gosh, they're going to a camp, but then this is going to be the part they're going to go back to how they were. So you're quick to recognize what I'm saying, but then at the same time, you have a positive spin on things, and even how you show up in the family. Just you're happy and you're goofy, and it just lifts the environment, and I really really appreciate that about you.
Thanks, babe. I was thinking about this last weekend. I had the opportunity to teach at our church, which was a lot
Oh
of
yeah,
fun and an
yeah,
honor and a privilege for me.
yeah.
I just appreciate your support. You were there encouraging and being supportive. And then another thing I appreciate is you kind of own our social calendar. And so after that, we had some incredible families come and just hang out at the house. And that was a blast. I had fun just hanging out, getting to know other couples from our local church. And that happens because of you. So I just appreciate your planning and your inviting and making stuff happen.
Thank you. All right. Well, thank you again for joining us on this podcast about intentionality. We truly hope that you were able to learn something that you can apply, and really that it sparks discussion. And no matter what season you're in, if you're in a low place or a high place, I just want to encourage you to know that there's always, always hope.